Rain drizzled softly against the cracked window of a small apartment, blurring the neon lights of the street below. Inside, two young sisters sat huddled around a single candle flame that flickered like their hope. Lily, the older by just 2 minutes, carefully folded a list she had rewritten 3 times. Milk, bread, rice, and something sweet if they could still afford it. Grace, her twin, tied her worn-out sneakers and smiled, pretending it didn't bother her that her toes peeked through the front. "Maybe today will be better," Grace whispered. Her voice trembled, yet her eyes tried to believe it. Outside, the cold wind bit at their cheeks as they walked toward the corner grocery store, a small place that smelled like rain and old wood. The bell above the door jingled, and warmth wrapped around them instantly. Shelves towered like walls of color, canned goods, soft bread, fruits glowing under yellow light. It felt like stepping into another world, one where hunger didn't exist. Lily reached for a loaf of bread, counting coins in her palm. The sound of metal against skin felt heavy, too few for what they needed. "Let's just get what matters," she murmured. Grace nodded, her stomach growling quietly. As they walked through the aisles, the world outside seemed to fade, until Grace noticed something odd. Near the back, behind a stack of boxes, a faint light flickered from a door slightly ajar. It looked like a maintenance room, but she heard something. A low hum like machinery or maybe a whisper. "Lily," she said softly. "Someone's down there." Before Lily could stop her, Grace slipped through the gap and down a narrow set of stairs that creaked with every step. The air grew cooler, the smell of damp earth stronger. The light below wasn't just flickering. It pulsed. And then she saw him. A man, maybe in his 40s, sat on an old cot surrounded by monitors, files, and half-eaten takeout containers. His clothes were expensive but wrinkled, his shoes polished but dusty. He looked out of place. He raised his head slowly, eyes tired yet piercing blue. "What are you doing here?" he asked quietly. Grace froze. Lily stumbled in behind her, out of breath. We didn't mean to. We thought this was storage," she stammered. The man sighed, rubbing his temples. "It's fine, just don't tell anyone you saw me." His tone wasn't angry. It was pleading. "Before we dive deeper, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It amazes me how far a single story can travel. Drop your city. Let's see how wide kindness still spreads." The girls exchanged confused looks. He didn't seem dangerous, more like someone who hadn't spoken to anyone in a long time. Grace tilted her head. "Are you living down here?" He hesitated. "Something like that." The silence that followed was thick with unspoken stories. Lily noticed the untouched money envelope on the table, the document stamped with the name Michael L. Sterling, a name that sounded familiar, like one she'd read in a headline long ago. "Wait," she whispered, realization dawning. "You're that billionaire who disappeared 2 years ago." He gave a weak smile, the kind that hides pain behind it. "Was," he corrected softly. "I was that man." The sister stood there, stunned. The world outside might have forgotten him, but here he was, sitting beneath a grocery store, living like a ghost among shadows. "Why?" Grace finally asked. "Why hide here?" He looked at them for a long moment before answering. "Because up there," he pointed toward the ceiling, "I had everything except peace." The way he said it made Lily's throat tighten. For years they had chased peace too, just in a different form. The idea that someone so rich could crave what they longed for felt impossible, yet real. As the hum of the machines filled the silence, Grace whispered, "Do you need help?" Michael almost laughed, a sound mixed with disbelief and gratitude. "No one's asked me that in a long time." For a brief second, their worlds, one poor and one lost, collided. None of them knew it yet, but this meeting would ripple far beyond the basement walls. The rain above grew heavier. Michael leaned back against the cold wall, the dim light from the monitor painting his face in pale blue. Lily and Grace exchanged silent glances, unsure whether to stay or leave. Every instinct told them to go, to climb those creaky stairs and forget they ever came here. But something in Michael's eyes kept them still. It wasn't fear that held them. It was sadness. Grace stepped closer.
You look
"Hungry," she said softly. Her small hands clutched the grocery bag tighter, the one that held the bread they barely could afford. Michael hesitated, his throat moving as if swallowing pride. "I'll be fine," he murmured, but his voice betrayed him. It carried the dryness of someone who hadn't eaten in days. Without waiting, Grace tore the loaf in half and handed it to him. "Here," she insisted. "It's warm. You can take it." He blinked at the gesture, almost startled. Slowly, his fingers reached out and touched the bread, his eyes flickering with something fragile. Gratitude. "You shouldn't give away what little you have," he said quietly. Lily smiled faintly. "Sometimes sharing makes it feel like we have more." The man froze, her words hitting deeper than she knew. He took a small bite, and for the first time in months, a genuine expression softened his face. The basement filled with silence, not awkward, but peaceful. Grace sat cross-legged on the cold floor while Lily wandered near the corner, noticing stacks of notebooks filled with sketches, numbers, and pages marked Project Haven. "What's all this?" she asked. Michael looked up. "Dreams," he said simply. "Ones I abandoned when the world stopped believing in me." Lily traced a page with her finger, reading half-finished blueprints of shelters, food programs, and free education models. "You were building this?" "I was," he admitted. "Until people I trusted took everything. I disappeared to protect what was left." Grace frowned. "That's not fair," he gave a hollow laugh. "Fairness is a word the rich use to comfort the poor." The candlelight flickered between them. Three strangers, each broken in different ways, found themselves talking like old friends, connected by pain that somehow made them feel less alone. After an hour, Lily noticed the time. "We should go," she whispered. "It's getting dark," Michael nodded. "Be careful walking home. The city isn't kind to those who hope too much." Grace paused near the stairs. "Will you be okay?" His eyes softened. "I'll manage," he said, though the lie was visible in the way his shoulders slumped. "If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest. Comment your answer below, and if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters." The next morning, Lily couldn't stop thinking about him. The memory of that lonely man beneath the store haunted her. She watched Grace add water to their last bit of soup, pretending it was enough. "We can't just leave him there," Lily said suddenly. Grace looked up. "Who?" "You know who." "Michael." Grace hesitated, spoon halfway to her lips. "Lily, we can barely feed ourselves." "I know," she whispered. "But maybe we can still help, even a little." That evening, they packed what little they could, a jar of peanut butter, a few biscuits, and a flask of hot tea. Grace grumbled softly but went along. Deep down, she understood why Lily couldn't ignore it. When they reached the store, the cashier gave them a puzzled look. "Back again?" Lily forced a smile. "Forgot something." They slipped downstairs quietly, the air colder than before. The hum of the machines was gone. "Michael wasn't there." "Michael!" Grace called softly. No answer. They searched, hearts thudding, until a faint sound came from behind a curtain, a weak cough. Michael was lying on the floor, pale and sweating, the teacup from yesterday knocked over beside him. "Michael!" Lily rushed forward, kneeling beside him. His breathing was shallow, eyes half open. "You need a doctor!" He shook his head weakly. "No. No hospitals, please!" Grace's hands trembled. "You'll die if we don't." "I've already lost everything that mattered," he murmured. Lily's jaw tightened. "Then let us matter." Her voice broke through the stillness. She placed her hand on his forehead in burning hot. "Grace, help me sit him up." They moved him carefully, wrapping his coat tighter. Grace handed him the flask. "Drink," she whispered. Michael obeyed, eyes flickering open just long enough to meet theirs. "You too," he breathed. "You're not what I expected from this world." Grace smiled faintly through tears. "Neither are you." In that damp basement, kindness became a lifeline, fragile but real. And for the first time in years, Michael felt human again. The night stretched long, the rain outside relentless. But inside, three souls, poor, broken, and unseen, began to stitch something beautiful together. The storm outside had faded to a hush by morning. The city glimmered under a soft gray sky, but deep in the basement, time still moved differently. Michael stirred awake to the faint sound of humming. Grace's voice. She sat on the cold floor, peeling an orange she'd bought with her last few coins, offering half to Lily and half to him. "You should eat," she said gently. He accepted it silently, his hand trembling slightly as the scent of citrus filled the small space. It wasn't the fruit that made his throat tighten. It was the gesture. The simple, unspoken care of strangers. Lily poured the last of their tea into a cracked cup and passed it around. "We can bring more later," she said. "You just need to rest." Michael studied them, eyes shadowed with thought. "Why?" he asked. "Why help me?" "You don't even know who I am." Lily smiled faintly. "We know enough. You were alone." That word, alone, echoed through him like an old wound reopening. He looked down at the floor, then at his reflection in the puddle forming from a leaking pipe. "You remind me of someone," he said quietly. "Someone I failed." Grace tilted her head. "Who?" He hesitated, then reached for a torn photo tucked beneath one of his notebooks. It showed a woman with kind eyes and a young boy laughing beside her. "My wife and son," he whispered. "They were everything to me." "What happened?" Lily asked softly. He took a shaky breath. "A deal gone wrong. Betrayal, lawsuits. It wasn't just money I lost. It was them. I thought if I disappeared, maybe they could live without the shame." Grace's eyes shimmered. "But they didn't stop loving you, did they?" He looked away, voice breaking. "I'll never know. I haven't seen them since." For a moment, the basement felt like a confessional. The hum of old lights above filled the silence that followed. Lily reached across and placed her hand on his. "Then maybe it's time to stop hiding." He almost smiled. Almost. "You talk like someone who's never been crushed by the world." Her expression faltered, but she didn't argue. They all carried invisible scars. "Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Write yes and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think." Days began to blend together. Every evening, the sisters brought something small, bread, soup, or just conversation. In return, Michael began teaching them things they never imagined learning. Budgeting, writing business plans, small ideas about hope, and building something from nothing. "Money," he said one evening, scribbling numbers on a box flap, "is only powerful when it serves others. Otherwise, it owns you." Grace laughed. "You sound like one of those rich people who suddenly turns wise." Michael chuckled softly. "Maybe. But I was foolish once. I chase profit, not peace. Now I just want to give what I know to someone who'll use it right." Lily leaned forward. "Like us?" He nodded slowly. "Exactly like you." Their bond deepened in the quietest ways. Shared meals, late-night talks, laughter that echoed faintly through the walls. For the first time, the basement didn't feel like a prison anymore. It felt like something sacred, a hidden pocket of kindness in a world too loud to notice. One evening, while Michael was sketching again, Grace noticed something odd. A sealed envelope taped under his table. "What's this?" she asked playfully. His hand shot out, stopping hers. "That," he said firmly, "is not for now." Lily frowned. "Are you in danger?" He looked toward the ceiling, listening to footsteps above. "Not yet. But secrets don't stay buried forever." There was something in his voice. A quiet fear that didn't belong to a man who'd lost everything, but to someone who still had something left to lose. Grace exchanged a worried glance with Lily. "If something happens, we'll help you," she said softly. Michael smiled weakly. "No one said that to me in a very long time." The lights flickered, a faint rumble above them. The grocery store was closing and the world above kept spinning, unaware that beneath its floors, a new kind of family was forming. When the sisters finally left that night, Michael stayed awake long after, staring at the photo of his family and the half-eaten orange peel beside it. For the first time in years, he didn't feel invisible. He whispered into the quiet, Maybe I was meant to be found. Up on the street, Lily held Grace's hand tighter than usual as they walked home. The rain had stopped, but the city still glistened, every puddle reflecting streetlights like stars trapped on the ground. Neither of them spoke, but they both knew the truth. Something in their lives had shifted forever. The next few days came with an unexpected rhythm. Every evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the streets in gold, Lily and Grace returned to the grocery store. They always carried something in their worn tote bag. Sometimes leftovers from a neighbor who pitied them. Sometimes a loaf of bread bought with carefully counted coins. Michael would greet them with that quiet half-smile, already setting out 3 mugs as though he'd been waiting all day. The basement had transformed. Boxes pushed aside, an old blanket spread on the floor, and a single bulb replaced to cast a warm yellow glow. One night, as Grace unpacked a small jar of honey, she grinned. "You think we're running a cafe down here?" Michael chuckled. "A cafe of kindness. That's worth more than most restaurants I've owned." Lily sat beside him, curious. "You owned restaurants?" "Among other things," he said, his eyes distant. "Hotels, charities, a company that built shelters for the homeless. At least that's what it was meant to be, before greed swallowed it whole." Grace tilted her head. "So you were one of the good billionaires?" He laughed softly. "If there's such a thing, I tried to be." The warmth in his laughter made Lily smile, but beneath it lingered something broken. She could feel it, that guilt he carried like an anchor tied to his soul. Later, while Grace cleaned up, Lily found herself asking, "What would you do if you could start over?" Michael paused, his gaze heavy with thought. "I'd build something honest, something that couldn't be bought or sold." She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe it's not too late." He looked at her, studying her expression, the fierce light in her eyes despite the hunger, the exhaustion, the poverty. "You remind me of my son," he said. "He believed that too. Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight." That night, after they left, Michael opened the old envelope under the table. Inside were several pages, legal documents, bank codes, unfinished letters. His fingers trembled over one in particular. Last will. Draft. He stared at it for a long moment before closing the envelope again. He wasn't ready yet, but for the first time, he felt like maybe he would be. The next morning, the sisters woke to the sound of the landlord pounding on their door. "Rent's due," he barked. "You're a week late!" Lily rushed to the door, her heart pounding. "Please, just 2 more days." "I promise," the man sneered. "Promises don't pay bills. By Friday, or you're out." He left without another word, slamming the door so hard the candle flickered out. Grace sat down on the bed, tears brimming. "Lily, what are we going to do?" Lily looked toward the cracked ceiling, her mind racing. She didn't know, but she couldn't let Grace see that. "We'll figure it out," she whispered. "We always do." That evening, when they arrived at the store again, their smiles were thinner. Michael noticed. "What's wrong?" Lily hesitated. "Nothing, just life." He didn't press her, but later, as they were leaving, he handed her a folded piece of paper. "Take this," he said. She frowned. "What is it?" "An idea," he said. "Read it when you get home." When they returned to their apartment, Lily unfolded it under the flickering candlelight. It was a handwritten note with instructions. Simple but strange. "Tomorrow, come early. Bring your courage." Grace read it aloud and groaned. He's mysterious again. But Lily couldn't shake the feeling that something important was about to happen. The next morning, the sisters arrived before sunrise. The store hadn't even opened yet. Michael was already waiting outside, wearing a clean shirt and a look of quiet resolve. "Where are we going?" Grace asked suspiciously. He smiled faintly. "Just a short walk." They followed him through winding streets until they reached a small, run-down community center. Its sign was half broken, the paint peeling. Inside, dust covered everything. Chairs, tables, even the small stage at the front. Michael looked around with a faraway gaze. "This place once gave food to hundreds of families," he said softly. "It was mine." "Until the city shut it down," Grace frowned. "Because of the lawsuits?" He nodded. "Because people stopped believing in me." Lily turned slowly, taking in the space. The faded posters, the empty shelves, the silence that begged to be filled. "We could fix it," she whispered. Michael smiled sadly. "We?" She looked him in the eyes. "You said you wanted to build something honest. Let's start here." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then his lips curved just slightly. "You sound like a leader, Lily," she blushed. "Maybe just someone who's tired of watching good things die." He exhaled, the weight in his chest shifting into something lighter. Fragile hope. "Then let's see what we can bring back to life." The morning sun broke through the dusty windows, painting them in gold. 3 shadows stretched long across the cracked floor, the first outlines of a promise being reborn. Dust rose around them as Michael pulled open the old doors to the community center. The sisters coughed, waving their hands to clear the air, but beneath the grime, Lily could already see what it once was. A place filled with laughter, meals, warmth. A place that felt alive. Grace ran her fingers along a wall covered in faded children's drawings. "It looks like a memory," she whispered. Michael nodded. "It was, until the funding dried up and I gave up." Lily turned to him. "Then maybe it's time to start again." He smiled faintly. "You talk like that's easy." "It's not," she said, "but neither is living with regret." For the next few hours, the 3 of them worked in silence, sweeping dust, clearing debris, opening old boxes filled with unused supplies. Grace found an old radio and somehow got it to play a crackling tune. The sound echoed through the room, lightening the air. Michael laughed softly. "You two have a way of making ruins feel like home." Grace shrugged. "Maybe home is just where people care enough to fix what's broken." He stared at her for a long moment, the words striking something deep within him. By evening, they sat together, exhausted but smiling. The floor was clean, the windows half-washed, and the air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. For the first time in years, Michael saw his dream again, not as a billionaire, but as a man reborn through kindness. If that moment hit you hard, leave a... Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. Over the next week, the project became their secret mission. Lily sketched ideas in her notebook. Grace charmed nearby shopkeepers into donating supplies, and Michael used his old contacts, quietly, anonymously, to gather more. The sisters didn't ask how. They trusted him. One evening, after a long day of scrubbing walls, Grace collapsed onto a chair, laughing breathlessly. "You know, if we keep this up, people will actually start showing up." Michael smiled. "That's the idea." He walked to the dusty stage and looked out at the empty chairs. "This place used to feed over 100 families every weekend," he said. "Maybe we can start small again, free meals, clothes, tutoring for kids." Lily nodded. "It's beautiful." Michael looked at her, his voice soft. "It's hope." That night, as the sisters left, Grace turned back and caught something she hadn't seen before. A light in Michael's eyes, faint but alive. For the first time, he didn't look like a man hiding. He looked like someone coming back, days blurred into weeks. Word began to spread, not fast but enough. One mother told another. A shopkeeper sent his nephew. Soon, the community center wasn't empty anymore. Children's laughter filled the halls. The smell of soup drifted through open doors. Michael stood by the window one afternoon, watching as Lily helped an old woman carry a box of donated clothes. Grace painted a mural on the wall, her hands stained with color. He whispered to himself, "This is what I was meant to do." But even as joy returned, something else crept in. Fear. He knew his past wasn't gone. The lawsuits, the people who'd stolen his name, they still existed. And if they discovered where he was, everything could crumble again. That night, after everyone left, he opened the envelope once more. He added a new page, handwritten, sealed carefully, and slid it inside. On the front, he wrote in uneven letters, "For Lily and Grace, if I can't finish what we started." He tucked it beneath a loose floorboard, then sat back, exhausted. For the first time in a long while, he prayed, not for wealth or redemption, but for time. The next morning, the sisters arrived early, laughing about something trivial. But as soon as they saw him, they sensed something off. Michael's color was pale. His breathing was shallow. "Michael," Lily said quickly, rushing to his side. "What's wrong?" He waved a trembling hand. "Just tired," Grace frowned. "No, you look sick," he tried to smile. "I've been sick for a while. I just didn't want to waste what time I had left hiding anymore." Lily froze. "What do you mean, time you have left?" He looked at them with quiet eyes. "The doctors gave me months. That was before I came here. I didn't plan to make it this far." Grace shook her head, tears brimming. "No, you can't say that." Michael reached out, taking her hand. "Don't cry for me. You already gave me more than I thought I'd get, a reason to believe again." The room fell silent except for the faint hum of the radio still playing. In the corner, the same soft song that had filled the air the first day they'd cleaned, Lily whispered, voice breaking. "Then we'll make every day count." He nodded slowly. "That's all I want." And in that moment, beneath the fading sunlight filtering through dusty windows, 3 hearts, one old, 2 young, made an unspoken promise. Whatever time remained, it would not be wasted. The morning light poured through the wide glass windows of the restored community hall. Dust motes swirled lazily in the golden air like memories refusing to fade. Lily arrived first, balancing a basket of bread on her hip, while Grace trailed behind, holding flowers she'd picked from the roadside. "Good morning, sunshine," Grace teased. "You're up early?" Lily grinned faintly. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd bake something fresh for the volunteers." She looked around, proud. What had once been a forgotten ruin now felt alive, walls painted, tables neatly arranged, laughter echoing daily. But behind the beauty lay a truth neither of them could ignore. Michael's health was fading. When he entered the hall, dressed in his old gray sweater, his steps were slower. His smile, though warm, carried exhaustion. Yet he refused to stop. Every day he greeted visitors, lifted boxes, gave advice to anyone who came seeking hope. Grace approached him, gently scolding, "You should rest, at least for today." He chuckled softly. "If I sit still, I might not get up again. Besides, seeing this place alive keeps me breathing." Lily frowned. "You've already done enough. You don't need to prove anything." Michael shook his head, looking around at the children running past with bowls of soup. "Maybe not. But some debts aren't about money. They're about the soul." The sisters exchanged a glance, the kind that carried both admiration and heartbreak. That evening, a sudden rainstorm swept the streets. The sisters stayed late, cleaning up as thunder rumbled in the distance. Michael sat by the doorway, staring at the rain through the window. His hands trembled slightly, his breath uneven. Grace noticed first. "Michael?" He smiled weakly. "Do you know, I used to watch the rain from my penthouse balcony. It looked so small from up there, but here, it feels real again." Lily knelt beside him. "You're not going to talk like that again, okay?" "You're getting better." He looked at her, the same gentle stubbornness she'd shown since the day they met. "You really believe that?" Her voice cracked. "I have to. For a long time, the only sound was rain." Then Michael spoke softly. "If something happens to me, promise you'll keep this place alive." Grace blinked away tears. "Don't say that. You'll see it grow." "Promise me," he repeated. Lily nodded slowly, tears glistening on her lashes. "We promise." He smiled, closing his eyes for a moment. "Then I can rest easy." The next morning, Michael wasn't there. His usual seat by the window was empty. Panic set in quickly. The sisters searched every corner of the building, calling his name, until Grace found a note pinned to the notice board. Her hands shook as she read aloud, "Gone for a short walk. Don't worry, just needed some air." But as hours passed, worry grew heavier. The rain had returned, harsher now, and night crept in like a shadow. The sisters, drenched and breathless, found him near the old bench by the river, sitting still, umbrella fallen beside him. Lily ran to him, shaking his shoulder. "Michael, please, wake up!" He didn't move. Grace dropped to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably as Lily held his cold hand, whispering, "No, you can't leave now." In his coat pocket, they found the sealed envelope, the one he had hidden beneath the floorboard, now addressed to them. With trembling hands, Lily opened it under the rain. Inside were 2 letters. One was short, simple. "Don't cry for me. You gave me peace when I had none. Keep my promise alive. Help others the way you helped me remember who I was." The second was longer. Legal papers, transferring ownership of the community center to the Twin Hearts Foundation. Grace covered her mouth, choking on her tears. "He left everything to us?" Lily nodded slowly. "No. To the world, through us." Weeks later, the community gathered in that very hall, now brighter than ever, to honor the man who'd changed their lives. A photograph of Michael stood by the door, surrounded by flowers. Children played nearby, unaware that their laughter was his legacy. Grace stood on the small stage, her voice trembling. "He taught us that wealth isn't what you keep, it's what you give away," Lily added softly. "He came into our lives by accident. But maybe it wasn't an accident at all." The crowd clapped gently. A sea of warmth and grief intertwined. As the day faded, the sisters sat together in silence, watching the sunset through the same window where Michael used to sit. Grace whispered, "Do you think he's watching?" Lily smiled faintly. "He's more than watching. He's here, in every laugh, every meal, every heart that walks through that door." Outside, the wind carried the scent of rain, the same rain that had once taken him away, now washing everything clean, and from that day on, the Twin Hearts Foundation grew, feeding hundreds, sheltering families, spreading hope across the city. The legend of the billionaire in the basement became a story parents told their children, not of riches lost, but of humanity found. The sisters kept his promise day after day. And sometimes when the days after Michael's memorial blurred together, soft, silent, and heavy. The community center still buzzed with life, but for Lily and Grace, every laugh echoed with an absence they couldn't name. Each corner carried a memory, his calm advice, his old sweater draped over a chair, the sound of his laughter mixing with the rain outside. Yet grief slowly transformed. Pain became purpose. One evening, Lily stood by the old wooden table where Michael used to sit, sorting through letters the foundation had received. Most were from strangers, families thanking them for food deliveries, children drawing pictures of the kind sisters, and one note that read simply, "Because of you, I didn't give up today." Grace entered quietly, wiping her hands on her apron. "You're still reading those?" Lily smiled softly. "Every single one. They remind me why we keep doing this." Grace leaned against the wall, eyes distant. "Do you ever wonder what he'd say if he saw all this?" Lily looked up at the ceiling. "I think he'd just smile and say we finally learned what real wealth is." For a moment, they both smiled through the ache, the kind of smile that grows only from love that never leaves. A week later, a government car arrived outside the foundation. A middle-aged man stepped out wearing a sharp suit and carrying a black folder. He introduced himself as Mr. Donovan, a legal representative from one of Michael's old companies. "Miss Lily, Miss Grace?" he greeted politely. "I'm here to finalize a few matters regarding Mr. Harrington's estate." Grace exchanged a worried glance with her sister. "Estate? We already received everything in his will." The man smiled faintly. "Not everything. There's one more thing." He placed the folder on the desk and opened it carefully. Inside was a property deed, a large piece of land on the city's outskirts, and a small velvet box. "This," he explained, "was to be given to you on the 1-year anniversary of his passing. But as I understand, you've honored his memory far beyond his expectations. He wanted you to have it early." Grace hesitated before opening the box. Inside lay two identical pendants, silver hearts entwined, engraved with the words, "For kindness found in rain." Lily's throat tightened. "He planned this all along." Mr. Donovan nodded. "He often spoke about you two. Said you reminded him of what he used to be before success hardened him." Grace's eyes shimmered. "That land, what are we supposed to do with it?" He smiled. His letter said, and I quote, "They'll know." Weeks later, they did know. Standing on the empty plot surrounded by wildflowers and tall grass, Lily felt something stir deep inside her. "A shelter," she said softly. "Not just for the homeless, for anyone who's lost their way." Grace nodded slowly. Like he once was, construction began within months. Volunteers from the community center joined in, locals donated, and soon the Harrington Home of Hope began to rise from the soil, a symbol of rebirth, love, and second chances. One morning, as the first bricks were laid, the sky darkened with clouds. A gentle rain began to fall, soaking the earth and the workers alike. Grace looked up, laughing through tears. "It's him, isn't it?" she whispered. Lily smiled, clutching her pendant. "Yeah, he never misses a storm." That night, sitting by the half-built shelter, the sisters shared a quiet dinner. Candlelight flickered between them, casting shadows that looked almost alive. Grace broke the silence. "You ever think about how far we've come?" Lily nodded. "From skipping meals to feeding hundreds. From strangers to family." Grace looked at her sister with a tender smile. "He gave us everything," Lily's voice softened. "No, he reminded us we already had it. Each other." For a long moment, they just sat there, listening to the rain. Then Lily turned to the invisible sky, her voice barely above a whisper. "If you're listening, thank you." The wind shifted, and for a heartbeat, they swore they heard laughter. Warm, distant, familiar. "If you believe love still wins," Lily murmured, her voice trembling. "Comment amen. Let's fill this story with hope. Maybe someone scrolling through their own storm tonight needs to see it." And as if the world was listening, the rain eased into a soft drizzle, and a faint rainbow appeared beyond the construction site. The sisters leaned on each other, smiling through the tears, knowing the story wasn't over. It was just beginning again. In another heart, another act of kindness, months passed, and the Harrington Home of Hope stood tall, a sanctuary of second chances. The walls were painted a warm cream, the courtyard bloomed with flowers, and laughter echoed through the halls every morning. Grace walked through the front entrance carrying a box of donated clothes. A group of children ran past her, their giggles lighting the air. One little boy stopped, holding up a paper drawing. "Miss Grace!" "Look, it's you, Miss Lily, and Mr. Michael in heaven." Her heart clenched as she knelt to see it. 3 smiling figures beneath a rainbow. Tears filled her eyes. "That's beautiful, sweetheart. Keep it safe, okay?" Across the courtyard, Lily was helping an elderly woman plant new saplings. Her hands were covered in soil, but her smile was bright. "Each one of these trees will grow stronger than before," she said. "Just like us," Grace joined her quietly. For a moment, they stood together, watching the people around them, families eating, children playing, volunteers serving food. It all felt alive, Lily whispered. "You think he'd be proud?" Grace nodded. "He already is." That evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in strokes of gold and pink, the sisters lit a single lantern and placed it by the shelter's gate, a tradition they'd started every year to honor Michael's memory. Grace spoke softly. "You once said debts of the soul can't be repaid. But maybe love is the only currency that never runs out." Lily looked up at the lantern as it began to drift upward, her eyes shimmering. "He gave us more than money. He gave us purpose." The wind caught the lantern, lifting it gently into the twilight. The sisters watched it rise until it became a glowing star among the others, a quiet symbol of everything they'd lost and everything they'd gained. Weeks later, their foundation story went viral. News stations called it the billionaire who found humanity underground. Donations flooded in from across the world. Strangers shared their own stories of kindness, heartbreak, and hope. One comment stood out beneath their video, written by a woman from another country. "I was about to give up. Then I watched your story. Thank you for reminding me that kindness still exists." Lily read it aloud, smiling softly. "That's what he meant when he said we'd know." This was the reason," Grace nodded. "And maybe the beginning of someone else's miracle." A few days later, rain returned, gentle, familiar, and full of memories. The twins stood beneath the doorway, arms linked, watching droplets dance on the pavement. Lily whispered, "Every time it rains, I feel him closer." Grace smiled faintly. "Me too, it's like he never really left." They stepped out into the rain, laughing as the water soaked their clothes. Around them, volunteers ran for cover, but the sisters stayed, spinning in circles, eyes lifted to the sky, hearts wide open. In that moment, it wasn't grief anymore. It was gratitude. "Before we end this story," Lily said softly, almost to the wind, "don't scroll past quietly. Tap like. Not for us, but for the man who found hope in the darkest basement and gave it back to the world. Let it be your way of saying, 'I felt this.'" She paused, looking at Grace. "And if one person watching remembers to be kind tomorrow, then his story lives on." Grace took her sister's hand. Together, they walked back inside as thunder rolled far away. The sound no longer frightening, but comforting, like an old friend's laughter carried by the rain. That night, the city lights shimmered across the wet streets. Inside the shelter, every window glowed warm. And somewhere in that soft glow, two sisters finally rested. No longer poor, no longer lost, but richer in every way that mattered. Outside, the rain slowed to a whisper, washing the world clean once more. Because sometimes the greatest fortune isn't found in gold, but in the hearts that choose to give, even when they've lost everything, and beneath that endless sky, their promise remained to cuss.